I think it's a natural piece for doctors and their assistants and hygienists to have a better working relationship because you are physically working with each other in the back. The front desk isn't always in that space. And so I like using the morning huddle to celebrate, and I'd like to hear from the doctor, from each team member, what was great about yesterday, who deserves a shout out. A lot of times just being acknowledged for doing your job that you've been hired for makes you feel so great.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Dr. Len Tao. Looking forward to come to you with another episode today. I always like to thank the sponsors, both Dental Intelligence and the doc sites, for their continued support, allowing me to come to your inbox every single Friday morning at 5 a.m. Eastern Time. We are in the middle of season 8. Hard to believe that I've recorded that many episodes. I kind of find it hard to believe as every time I record a new one that the numbers increase literally every time I do it. So I also want to remind people about my event in South Florida, September 26th and 27th. It's called Supercharge Your Dental Practice. This is the third year. This year is back in South Florida after spending a year in Scottsdale. And we are going to be focusing on practice growth leadership with 12 amazing speakers that will be announced very shortly. It's at Pier 66. And to find out more information, I want you to go to superchargeyourdentalpractice.com and check it out. And you can save $100 on registration by entering the keyword RAVING, RAVING. Superchargeyourdentalpractice.com. You don't want to miss this event. Today's episode is called Is Your Cup Full? My guest is Callie Ward from Dash Dental Consulting. Callie has been in the dental industry over 30 years. Callie's great accomplishments was successfully raising her family of 4 children with her husband Wayne and completed her master's degree when the kids were in middle school. Being able to balance work and family wasn't always easy, and now she is loving being a dash to her 3 grandchildren. Her goal is to help you and your practice be successful, and that might mean different things to different practices. She lives in Colorado with a husband and 2 dogs. They love to camp, hike, and be active with their children and grandchildren's lives. So please welcome to the Raving Patients Podcast, Callie Ward. Callie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here and to be a guest on your show.
Thank you for reaching out and wanting to be a guest. I like when people do that. So Callie, I always like to start this off by kind of asking my guests how they help dentists or how are they involved in the dental industry. So I know you have a kind of a big background. You've been involved in dentistry with various different things, but how does Dash Dental Consulting help dental practices?
So I think the thing that is my wheelhouse that I'm really passionate about is helping doctors and teams feel great at the end of the day. I think, when we are fulfilled, when we feel like it's repeatable, we show up with an amount of energy that is infectious and it passes on to our patients, and that energy, down the road equates into increased profits. And so there's always the business side of working with a dental practice, but that's also really important to me to have the personal side. So Dash is my business name. It is my grandma name. But if we think about the day that we're born and the day that we die, what's important is what we do with the dash. And so I really want to help my doctors get focused on what kind of a life that they want, what work-life balance, and not only the doctors, but the teams. So that's really my passion is helping everybody feel great at the end of the day, which means we're taking greater care of our patients.
And I think that's an important part of being a practice owner. So let's talk about some of the things we wanted to talk about here. So let's talk about communication with your vision and align with your team. So what do you have to say about that? How do you go about kind of portraying to the team what your vision is, and how do you get them to act on that vision?
Right. So I think the vision really has to come from the doctor. Why are they bringing a consultant in? What is the goal? What do we want to buy multiple practices? Do we just want to maximize this practice? Does the doctor want to work fewer days but make more money? So that vision has to be clarified on the doctor's end first and the owner's end, and then communicate that to the team, because we have to all agree, are we on the same bus? Are we headed in the same direction? So once we know kind of what that vision is, then we can work backwards and know where we're at right now and what do we need to do to fill the gap to get to that goal.
So on a side note, I interviewed a lot of consultants, coaches, all these different things that potentially help practices. And I always wonder, how does a practitioner, a doctor, know that they actually need a coach or need to hire a coach? How do they know that it's going to, help them grow? So do you have some inkling on that? Because you've obviously worked for some consulting agencies in the past. But can you talk about that? I'm always curious, how does someone know they actually need a coach?
Well, I think it's more if they're curious, right? If they feel like they've plateaued and I've tried everything that I know and I'm not getting the difference. Maybe they're really good at dentistry, but they don't really know the business side, or they don't really know the leadership side with their team, because there's so much that goes into play in a dental practice. But I think the number one thing is, are they willing to do anything differently? Like if they're gonna look to hiring a consultant and they want the consultant to fix their team, we can always work on systems. We can always improve those things. But if they're not willing to do anything differently and model that for their team, they're not going to see gigantic gains, because where's the skin in the game for the team if the doctor is not willing to do something differently? So I think, we have to be willing, just like if you were wanting to set a New Year's resolution. I mean, we're in January. Everybody wants to lose weight. We always want, if you think that you know where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are and where your opportunities are, and you know how to change that behavior, go for it. But it's a lot of times they don't know what they don't know. Let's say about front office systems or scheduling. Maybe they think that they're scheduling maximized, but it really isn't. So it's an analysis, and I'm happy to kind of take a peek in. It doesn't mean that it's always going to be a good fit. And that's the other thing that I think is super important with consulting is you want this person to have their strengths fit what your weaknesses are, so that we can kind of fill in that gap. But we also want it to be a personality match. Like I want to know that my core values align with the doctors and the teams. And that's part of that discovery process of what is the vision, what are the gaps, where do you want to hit? And what are we doing currently, and what do we need to do a little bit differently to do that? But it's a slow process. It isn't an overnight process.
Got it. Got it. The next thing that you wanted to touch base on, I'm curious about. So you wanted to talk about creating intentional connections on a deeper level with your team, so you know what makes them tick. Now, I bought a practice in 2007, and I was not a previous practice owner. I was an associate, thought I would be able to successfully run a business. And I learned how to do it, because running the business is very difficult. Doing the dentistry is the easy part. And I was kind of warned back then is not to create, as a business owner, really strong connections, almost like that you're a friend of your employees, because it makes it very difficult to lead a team if you're friends with them. And I brought an associate in when I was looking to sell the practice after COVID, and she became very good friends with the team as the associate. And when she bought the practice, she became the boss, and it became, in my opinion, a little bit harder to lead when you have these friendships created. So can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I'm curious specifically about creating these intentional connections with your team, so you know what makes them tick.
Yeah, I love that question, because I think it is. I think there has to be a healthy amount of both, right? Like when I look at coming in, if I were to manage a practice, I want to be the leader, and I want to have a set ideal, but I want them to be my team, not my staff. So I look at it as, we need to be connected as human beings. We need to be empathetic. We need to understand what makes them tick. So are they purpose driven? Are they money driven? We want to know where that is, so how we can feed that so that they feel good at the end of the day. But I don't, if I bring in a manager and they're not good at drawing that line of, I'm your manager and I'm your friend, that's where we get into those murky waters. So there's management in a way that I care about you as a human, not necessarily as your best friend, right? That I'm going to let something slide. And I think for me, the loyalty comes from somebody who sees me as a human being. Like, I want to give to you what I feel like you're giving to me. And it's that connection. just a raving fan, right? Like that's different than just a satisfied customer. It's the same for our team members. I think that we need to see them as human beings and be in a relationship as a human being where they know that they've got empathy, where they know that they've also got expectations. So I'm a huge proponent of growth-based goals and incentives based on performance and growth, as opposed to I've time served. I've been here 5 years. I deserve a raise. I don't agree with that.
I think it comes when you talk about bonuses, and I always like to say, when I go into offices and speak with them, the money part of it always comes up, and I always like to ask a question of the team, and that question is, why do you get a bonus? And right. I just stay quiet. I want answers. And I say, why do you get a bonus? And usually someone says, because we work hard. Another person says, because I show up to work, and very rarely will they say, because the practice is profitable. And right. That's the way the doctor can give a bonus, is because you have a profitable practice. If the practice isn't profitable, there is no bonus given. Exactly. You don't just, you get a salary to show up and do your job, or you get an hourly wage to show up and do your job. You get a bonus because of the practice profitability. And that's the thing that the team doesn't necessarily understand, because they don't know the business side of things. All they see is all this money coming in. They right. very rarely know how much money is going out and how little profit a lot of these practices have. You have a lot of practices who are running on 67 to 80 to 75% overhead, which is insane. And that means they're making 25 cents on the dollar sometimes. So they're not hugely profitable practices, but the team doesn't necessarily understand that. So how do you create this win-win-win as a practice so everybody, including the doctor and the team members, feel like they're actually getting something out of the relationship?
Right. So I think it's really important with the doctor on the beginning, and when we're looking at the vision and we're looking at the growth and the KPIs that we want to hit and where are we at. So we need to analyze what is our profit incentive point. What do we need to collect to pay the bills, to pay the associate, to pay the rent, to pay all of those things that we have, the team salary, and put money in savings every month so that we can deal if COVID comes up. Like we need to have we need to have a very safe number on the practice. So let's say that we set our profit incentive point at 100 grand, and then anything that we produce over that is our profit, right? So if we look at breaking that down then from a monthly production total to how many days are we available that month, to how many available hours are we set production targets based on that, collecting at 98%. That gives us that amount. And I'm a huge proponent of a daily grab bag. I think that that's a great thing. I think once we've been profitable for a certain amount of time, I then love to see a percentage base of profit sharing, because that really is, you talk about skin in the game. But it takes time to get to that point. So ideally, we're setting goals that are realistic, that are ones that we can hit, and that the doctor's just as motivated to hit that production goal as the team is. So that means I've got a hygienist trying to fill their schedule when it bombs out. It's a team bonus. It's not an individual, and that's kind of when we incentivize different team members, we don't have the same opportunities. And so we want to keep it clean and easy, where it's a win for the team, it's a win for the practice, it's a win for the patient, and it's a win for the doctor.
I agree 100%. And I actually had a grab bag in my practice. And the unique thing about it was, or the interesting thing about it is that my coach was Susan Lekowitz, who was also a PDA. So I wonder if there was a grab bag, something that PDA taught you guys?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Okay. Since you brought it up as well. So we had a grab bag. And for those that don't know what that is, it's what we did was we put I got a shoe bag. Women will know what that is. Got a shoe bag, put poker chips with different denominations on there. It started with $1, and then we eliminated the $1, and then we put between $5 and $100 in there. I think there was 100, 150, like 220s, bunch of 10s, a bunch of 5s, and then at the end of the day, when we achieved the goal, and the way ours worked was, if we started the day above the goal and we fell below it and went back above it, they got it. If we stayed above the goal, they got an opportunity as well, because we know what our goals was every day in the practice. And they got to literally, at the end of the day, they got to pick a chip and whatever the chip was, they made some extra money. So that's what and I think it works really well for camaraderie in the office. You celebrate it, you pay them, and everybody win. It's a win-win-win for everybody, like you stated.
Yeah.
So
and it's fun, and you don't really think. I mean, $10 here, $5 there. You don't think it's really making that big of an impact. But we did this in the practice when I was an employee, and I remember saving for a year, throughout the school year, my bonus, and that's what I took my daughter on a trip to Seattle. We lived in Eastern Washington. Took her on a trip to Seattle to buy her prom dress, and I wasn't concerned at what really the cost of the prom dress was because I had that cash saved up from grab bag, which, that's, some people use it to fill their gas tank. Some people use it for something like that. You just don't know, but it's that immediate gratification of making the 3 extra calls to get that patient in the schedule, to fill the schedule, to hit the goals.
And the big thing is you want to do it on a daily basis. What we used to do is we did it on a weekly basis, and they got to pick multiple chips. It just had the same effect because you want to do it on the spot so they can celebrate what happened during that day.
Right. And you can set some guidelines. Like if they don't show up on time for the huddle, they don't get a draw, even if they hit it. If they haven't completed their task, so if their notes aren't done for the day, they don't get to do it. I mean, there's different ways that you can hold accountability based on that. Part-time, if you had a part-timer who only worked that day, they're going to be able to draw that day and not draw on the other days. Like it is a really fun way to get the whole team engaged and excited. And, halfway through the day, I'd send a message back, hey, we're only $300 off a goal. And, you're always looking for those opportunities. And it's just a great way to incentivize, build the energy, and take great care.
And we didn't only incentivize the numbers in the practice. We also did hygiene visits to make sure the hygiene schedule was filled.
Yep.
I think we allowed 20% attrition. So if I'm just making up, we had 35 appointments a week. If we had less than 7 cancellations, they got an extra one at the end of the week for that week.
Yeah.
Try to make it fun for everybody involved. So I think that's a great way to do it. So let's shift gears. Let's talk about case acceptance. Okay. And I know that you think relationships are pivotal to case acceptance. So can you talk a little bit about what your thoughts are on that topic?
Absolutely. So, and I went to the dentist this week. I think it's unbelievably important to make eye contact with the human being before we go to dentistry. And so, physically, some operatories, it's hard to be face-to-face, knee-to-knee with the doctor to have that conversation. And I like using, a very quick way of connecting with people. So are you from here? Where are you from? Where did you go to school? Like, where can I find a connection that we have in common? So you and I started talking, you're from Florida, my son lives in Florida. Boom, we have a link. It's something that I will remember without notes, and I recommend keeping notes, like what those connections are, because now we're really good at asking patients those questions, but we're not good at giving the patient our information, right? Where that connection is. But it makes us feel like we know each other as a human being before we go to dentistry. And that's really important when we think of how do we help patients build trust? How do we help them feel like they know us and feel safe to move ahead? Like, they don't know if your margins are good. They don't know, all of those other things. None of that. They just know how we feel sitting in the chair with you. And so we have to be intentional with creating that connection with the human being before we go to dentistry. Oh, there's my dog.
What I like to do is I like to do or talk about something called disarming the patient. I've studied by video recording case presentations that I did when I was in practice, and I noticed there was a specific time when the patient relaxed in the chair. Because coming to the dentist is a new patient, and I'm not talking about existing patients who you have a relationship with, but new patients who you don't have a relationship with. They come in nervous, they come in thinking it's going to cost an arm and a leg, they come in not knowing what dentistry they need. So I talk about disarming the patient, and when you can disarm them, they will say yes to almost anything you provide them as long as they can afford it. And again, I've done this for a very long time, and I teach this in my case acceptance classes. But disarming them is really important. But part of the disarming is getting to know them, asking them key introductory questions that are not necessarily dental related, and then asking the important dental questions as well. So it's all relationship building. If you can't establish a relationship with a patient, in that short period of time that they're in, they're not going to say yes to treatment. They're going to walk out and go somewhere else. So
Exactly.
I am a firm believer in creating some sort of relationship with these people so they do say yes to treatments. Okay. And I just had a podcast and, she was talking about how the worst thing you can hear is a maybe. No or yes, maybe is like the worst thing you can hear. Okay.
Right.
So I want to get them to say yes. So, again, shifting gears again, how important does the team play in case acceptance, number one, but also overall, how do you make a really effective team that feels that they have been seen, they've been heard, they've been listened to, rather than someone who's just ignoring them or not paying attention to what they're saying and nothing gets done in the practice? So two things there. How can the team help with case acceptance? And then how do you make them feel like they have a say in the office that actually means something?
Right. So I think it's really, really important for the team to understand their role. So what does the front desk do when we answer the phone, when we get the patient in the schedule, when they arrive? Do we say, "Hi, Mrs. Smith, it's so great to see you," or do we just say, "Yep, I've got you checked in"? It's seeing that human being again. And so every touch point where we hand that patient off is an opportunity to build that relationship. It's also an opportunity for my team to hand off to their other team member and support them. So, Mrs. Smith, you're going to be in great hands today. Susie's going to get you back. She does a fabulous job. You're going to love her. We want to use the team members' names to enhance their relationship as well. And if you don't have name tags for your team, I highly recommend it. We need to say who we are and connect to that person. Case acceptance is all of those pieces, but when the doctor leaves the operatory, I want to know that the doctor and the patient have a clear idea how they're going to move forward. So if you're not ballparking what the fee is, they've got to know before they can make a decision. That's something with the doctor and the patient of, you're probably looking at $5,000. And if it were me, this is where I'd start, is on the upper right. And then prioritize. And did you get feedback that they can't afford $5,000? Well, here's where it is. We need to know, are we going to do everything? Are we going to do a quadrant? Are we going to do tooth by tooth? No judgment. We can take however much time the patient needs to. We want to work at a speed that works for them. But your team and everybody else, we need to know kind of what that game plan is. And that's not best discovered up front based on finances. And that's how often a lot of it is. So handoffs are unbelievably important. And then what are our systems? What's our unscheduled treatment follow-up? What are all of those pieces? So those are all where front desk plays a role, assistants play a role, hygienists play a role. If a patient hasn't moved forward with the treatment, gosh, can I ask what's kept you from getting scheduled? What gold that is to know what their problem was, so now we can advocate for them and help them move forward, solve that problem in whatever way we can. And the second part to your question was how do we see our team members to make them feel like they're important? I think it's a natural piece for doctors and their assistants and hygienists to have a better working relationship because you are physically working with each other in the back. The front desk isn't always in that space. And so I like using the morning huddle to celebrate, and I'd like to hear from the doctor, from each team member, what was great about yesterday, who deserves a shout out. A lot of times just being acknowledged for doing your job that you've been hired for makes you feel so great. So when somebody says, "Gosh, I heard you on the phone and you did a fabulous job with that person," that's a pat on your back that feels good. That, reaching bonus is fun, but that's a personal, I feel seen, I feel heard, and it's not noticed on something negative. It's a positive notice. And that's really important. And I also am a huge proponent of connecting with each team member and the doctor and asking them 5 words. So growth, challenges, money, purpose. Rank those in order to you and what means the most. And so if they tell you purpose is important for them and they're an assistant, how do you fill your cup with purpose if you're an assistant? Do you really feel like you're making an impact in this world? And sometimes it's just kind of unwinding that story. And I had an assistant here who was really upset we didn't recycle. And I'm like, okay, what do you need to recycle? And I don't know, I think we spent a couple $100 on some bins, and I got her to commit that if she wanted to quit doing it, she needed to train somebody to take it over. But I am telling you, that little gal, every time she recycled, she was glowing. She felt so seen and so heard because she solved a problem, and it was making her feel like she was making an impact in this world. It's that kind of connection with your team. I'm not her best friend, but I saw her. I heard what was important to her, and I helped her find a way to fill that cup more.
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that I like talking about now is, a lot of people focus on the negatives in practice. Even when you go into these Facebook groups, it's all negativity. And what I like to do is I like to have a jar that you put in somewhere in the office, and each week you can write down like what one of your wins were during the week. And then at the end of the year, you open it up and you celebrate the wins that you had, not necessarily focus on the negatives. So I always like that. I think that's a great way to celebrate the positives that come out of a practice rather than the negatives that are there, that people lament, they focus on. Obviously, if a dentist is working in the practice and there's something that's going on and it continues to happen, it's going to boil over one day, and it's going to cause a major problem in the practice. So celebrate the wins and don't worry about the losses or the failures as much is I think the main focus here.
Absolutely. And I think we really want to celebrate the behavior we want to see more of. So even if somebody else is doing something that is a negative, I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on that person who is doing the right thing and encourage that behavior in a way that's I'm not pointing a finger, but I'm also raising the standard for everybody by focusing on the things that are going well. And that's, you talk about cortisone, you talk about all of all the neuroscience behind it. That is what helps our team feel like they're in a safe environment. And when we take care of the safety and it feels like it's a healthy environment, we are more likely to try things differently and to do something differently to see a result because we feel safe.
Makes a lot of sense. In the time that you have available, I want to talk about one other thing, and it's work and life balance, which is a big topic nowadays. So can you share some things about building a practice that gives somebody the best work and life balance?
Right. I think that I've worked with quite a few doctors who were more in the mid to the end of their career, and it really wasn't money that they were after as much as they were having a little bit more time. So looking at what is your production, what have you been doing, looking at really intentional scheduling and setting that goal. It just depends on the practice, the doctor, what those goals are. But I think a work-life balance is making some acknowledgments of could I really delegate this to somebody else and trust and verify? You train, you set them up for success with clear expectations, but you come back and verify what can we take off their shoulders that isn't the best use of their time? What are some of those redundant systems that we've got the doc doing that maybe they don't like? Like that's why you would have an office manager. Let's delegate that. And I think that sometimes it's giving them permission to delegate because it's not an easy thing to do. I know I tend to, as a mom, I would take over and clean the thing because I knew it was going to get done my way, as opposed to taking the time to train my kids to clean the way that I wanted them to, so that we were both happy at the end result. And it's just that intentional focus and discussion and training.
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense. So, Callie, is there anything that we didn't discuss that you want to bring up before we switch to the lightning round Q&A?
Nope. I think we covered it all.
Perfect. So let's switch gears. Let's spend the next few minutes talking about the lightning round Q&A that we're going to talk about. For those that haven't listened to an episode before, I'm going to bring up a deck of cards on an app called Pod Decks that are business related questions. And I'm going to ask Callie these questions. Callie, you're going to answer them very quickly. These aren't long drawn out answers. I want to get through 8 or 10 of them in about 3 or 4 minutes. Okay. So first question is, if you had a chance to start your career over, what would you do differently?
I wouldn't feel like I have to stay somewhere for a very long time.
Okay. What is one thing that doesn't add value to your life, but you still continue to do it?
scroll on my phone.
Scrolling. My wife, I see her scrolling all day. I'm like, what do you do? I'm just scrolling. Like, what does that do for you? So,
Nothing.
okay. What important rules have you learned about business that have made you more successful?
People first.
Okay. This is a tough question, and people have difficulty with this one, but it's next on the list. If you had to open up a lemonade stand tomorrow, what would you call your stand?
Sugar.
Sugar. That's a nice one. Okay. How do you define success?
Success to me is my work-life balance. Like I'm in control of that. That's success to me. But success is different for everyone.
Everybody's different, correct? And I just spoke of that at my events.
I think it's important for my clients to define success for themselves. That's not for me to do.
Got it. What have you learned from the most successful person you know?
To take time for myself.
Okay. What book should you go back and reread as it's made a great impact on you the very first time you read it?
I think absolutely anything John Gordon, The Power of Positive Leadership, The Energy Bus, those are two highly recommend, and Extreme Ownership.
Do you have a favorite business podcast?
No, I get so much from the variety that I love to go to different ones and hear different perspectives. And I think part of that is the different guests.
Got it. Do you keep a journal and does it help you?
I don't, and I feel like I should.
Do you have a hard time telling people no?
I'm getting better.
Got it. Okay. Let's see. What habits you have help make you successful?
I absolutely believe that habit stacking is a true thing, and I think also grace.
Okay.
Because you can't be perfect.
You can't be perfect. Nope. Let's see. Who would you love to collaborate with, and what would you love to collaborate on if you had the opportunity?
Oh man, I don't know if I could pick just one, but I think I think that's why I love the Dental Entrepreneur Woman Group, because there's so many fabulous people in there that it's a safe environment. We talked about that. It feels like a very safe place to experiment and to bounce ideas off of. So I would say my Do group.
Got it. What has been your most satisfying moment in business?
I would have to say that would be getting a referral or a recommendation from a client who was satisfied.
Got it.
Just knowing that impact.
So obviously there's a lot of coaches, a lot of consultants, whatever you want to call yourself. How do you differentiate yourself from your competitors?
I think it has to be a personality based. I think it has to be strengths and weaknesses. I think that my commitment is I'm not going to have a gazillion clients. I want to stay small. I want to be available at any time to my clients, whether they want to meet on a weekly basis, a text every day. I want to be able to be connected to them as much as they want to be connected to me.
Got it. One last question. I ask everybody this question. What is one subscription, either business or personal, that you cannot live without?
The Bible.
You have a Bible app on your phone?
Yeah.
Got it.
I do.
Got it. Perfect, Allie. Really good. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for playing a role in that lightning round Q&A. It's a real fun part of the podcast. Callie, how could people reach out to you? How do they find out more about how you can help them? If they're interested, you want to give your contact information. I think you have a special offer to offer the audience.
Yep. My contact information is -dentalconsulting.com. You can get a calendar link from there, and I would love to offer a free month's subscription to consulting. So if you sign up by the end of February, I'd be happy to give you a free month's consulting.
Got it. Guys, if you like the episode, you like what Callie had to say, or you think someone else potentially would, please share the information, like us, review us, do all the things to help to promote the podcast. It would really be appreciative. I want to thank the sponsors, both Dental Intelligence and the Doc Sites, for their continued support every single year, and remind everybody about my event, Supercharge Your Dental Practice, September 26th and 27th in Fort Lauderdale, Florida at Pier 66. You can go to superchargeyourdentalpractice.com and use the code RAVING, RAVING, to save $100 on registration. I would really want to thank Callie for being part of the podcast and reaching out to me and wanting to be a guest on the podcast. I love when people do that. I wish more would, instead of me having to reach out to them. But Callie, thank you so much for joining me today. And as I end every single one of my podcasts, remember, your reputation matters. Until the next episode, Callie, thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
Thank you so much.